Right. Next up, we have our second panel discussion on interrogating how the use of cloud impacts the environment. Let me quickly introduce our eminent moderator and our panelists. Let me start with our moderator, Mr. Mohammad Shalan, PMO Director, E-Enterprise, Omar Kassem, Alesayi Group, OKAG, and Digital Transformation Director at Saudi Chapter of Project Management Institute. We also have with us Mr. Abdullah AlSalem, IT Director, Ministry of Health, Saudi Arabia, Engineer Abdulaziz Nasser Alkhlaif, Deputy CEO, Taib Healthcare Company, Mr. Basim Ali Mohsin Lawati, ICT Technical Senior Manager, Oman Airport Management Committee, Mr. Mohammed Sibgathullah Khan, Director, Information Technology, National Petrochemical Industrial Company, Saudi Arabia. Over to you, Mr. Shalan, to moderate the panel. And the stage is all yours.
Okay, thank you. Thanks indeed for this introduction, and thanks for having me and the team here. It's really my pleasure to be moderating this panel with my colleagues who are having a very rich background in terms of cloud computing as well as sustainability and environment. This panel actually is titled as interrogating how to use cloud impacts for the environment. And here, a lot of you actually are knowing that we have the ESG term, which stands for environmental, social, and governance, which is a fast emerging concept denoting the evaluation of business, collective carefulness, and reliability for environment, social, and governance factors. As you know, actually, the environmental factor or component evaluates how a business performs as a custodian of nature, analyzing how its operating activities affect the environment. Then we go to social component, which looks into how to strengthen and what are the weaknesses in the management of relationships of various stakeholders. If we go to the governance part, then we are talking about evaluating the business leadership, examining how decisions are made in relation to safeguarding the rights of the stakeholders of the project. And in here, actually, in this panel, we will be discussing mainly and focusing mainly on the cloud effect on the environment. And in here, I need to start actually with my first question to Mr. Abdulaziz Alkhlaif. And I need to address Mr. Abdulaziz how to describe the changes that comes with cloud implementation on the network and connectivity. If you can tell us based on your experience, what are the effects of cloud implementations on the environment, please?
Well, first of all, thank you for having us in this panel, and we hope to add value for that, giving feedback on our own experience. From 2016, we have started implementing whole upgrading for our network and anticipating to move to cloud computing. Once you think about cloud computing, you have to consider that a lot of processes will be done outside of your own network. So there would be a stress on communication within the environment itself or the network inside the on-site location, and also the connection between your organization and through the provider ISP and then to the cloud provider. So we made that that connection more durable, more have more throughput. Even with our current situation, increasing the bandwidth, increasing the throughput there, it does stress that once you have that connection, you need to have also a backup for it. And also once you have a backup for it, you have to have a backup for business continuity. So introducing cloud into any organization will change the dynamic inside it. So the thinking of we have our servers and our local network, and we could just deal with it and stress it as much as we like. The traffic is under our control, is no longer applicable. I think we need to really relook of how are we connecting and what are we connecting. I've been talking to other companies, and once they introduce a system like a content management system or a document management system, archiving system, they will feel a lot of pressure. So that is something that need to be looked at thoroughly before you move to the cloud. And if you move to the cloud, maybe employ some sort of condensing technology that will condense it from the source and to the destination, and it will be then again uncondensed or uncompressed. That's from our experience and what we have experienced from 2017 up 16 until now. Thank you.
Then maybe you are talking about to have some components of the solution outside the cloud, or at least you have a kind of edge computing or any kind of things for cloud, for something like heavily utilizing the bandwidth, such as documentation, something like this.
Sure.
You need to say.
Yeah, it is consuming a lot of the bandwidth that usually before moving to the cloud was reserved for only browsing and quick communication to the outside. After the implementation of cloud computing, it's really the main line of communication. It's become business critical. It's not only business critical to have it as bandwidth, small bandwidth. It's requiring a huge bandwidth. And the more that we implement and more move into either a private cloud or public cloud services, the more that we demand of that connection. So we end up with multiple connection, multiple ISP, just to make sure that there will not be any disconnection. And if there is, we are ready to with a backup, something like that.
Okay, very rich experience. Okay, thank you very much. Let me go to Mr. AlSalem actually, and I need to ask you what operating model need to be in place to successfully embrace the use of the cloud. Can you discuss or shed some light actually on the governance structure to help us having a right model, a right operating model for cloud, please?
Thank you so much, Mohammed. Very delighted to be here with you. It's our privilege to talk about this important topic, and especially in IT, we usually are not involved heavily with the environmental impact, although I think 2% of carbon emission is coming from IT, whether in terms of computing or manufacturing the hardware itself. I think we are accelerating in the adoption of cloud because of its flexibility, its reduction of cost and operating budget, and its agility. It gives us a more agile approach to release new services. When it comes to the operating model, I think there are major changes that are coming with that. One is when we are dealing with the cloud, we are dealing with a code. So we are not anymore dealing with an infrastructure or a network, and the skills that was required to manage the network or the servers, and the network engineers, the administrators will need to have some of the software engineering skills, because we will be managing and handling the infrastructure remotely through executing commands and through coding. So that will bring to us a couple of things. One is the traditional team formation that used to be before is going to change. We are no longer need to have everyone in place because they are close to the data center. Whenever there is troubleshooting, they will go in to the data center if they cannot remote access the servers, and then they will troubleshoot it from there. So that thing will not be required anymore. They will be managing the infrastructure if it is going to be in the cloud, infrastructure as a cloud, they will be managing it remotely. So that gives us a way to reorganize the operating model of having the infrastructure team or managing the infrastructure platform on the cloud remotely. And we are not going to need to have this activity in place or in-house anymore. So how that correlates with the environment, we will be needing less space of computing. We are not going to need big data centers, which also consumes a lot of power for cooling. We know that any data center need to have 24/7 cooling system because all the computing power inside the data center needs to be cooled off. We will not need any more generators, because if the power is going off, we need to have a generator that supplies the data center, so the continuity of running the infrastructure is on. So all of that will definitely have an impact on the environment. We will be having a shared resources instead of having one block of data center that consumes all of this computing power, electricity, cooling, generators, etc. So I think the operating model will change, and along with that, the consumption of space and of power and of cooling and of having alternative energy sources will also be changing, and it should eventually contribute positively to the environment and all.
Then I think what you are trying to say is that a lot of dynamics have been changed. So for example, the hardware dynamics have been changed and shifting from one location to spread all over the world. Similarly, you will find, for example, your team skill sets have been also changed. And then you have to also to orchestrate between multiple people, and maybe you need to have more skills at certain areas rather than other areas. So I think this like built for you a kind of governance model, how to control all these dynamics that is changing from the old mentality to new mentality. Well, your experience, how you see it, was an easy task or it was a difficult task to handle such kind of transformation in the mindset and in the skill set of the people?
Well, there is no question that there is a need of having of going through a change management process when adopting the cloud, because even though we are not seeing differences in terms of the services or the way the user is experiencing the IT solutions, but definitely there is a change in the way people are doing their task. There is a change in the KPIs. There is a change in the targets. There is a change in the objectives. There is a change in the way of doing work. So, for example, if you take it from security perspective or from infrastructure perspective, we are no longer managing a silo. We are managing a block within a bigger infrastructure. That bigger infrastructure is the cloud, and it is being utilized and being used by many other organizations. So that kind of thinking and way of dealing with the day-to-day job, our business as usual job of the IT team has to also accommodate and accept these things are going to accelerate, and they need to enhance their knowledge in managing them.
Oh, great, very much experience. Thank you very much. And now I need to go to Mr. Mohammed Khan, actually. Mr. Mohammed, you are part of petroleum industry. And petrochemical industry usually is looking heavily in environmental parameters, and because this is a lot of people have an eye on these kind of industries. What are the environmental benefits that you took out of cloud computing? And if you can correlate to this to other sources of environmental aspects of the petrochemical industry that you are in, please.
Thank you very much, first of all, Mohammed, Shalan, and the entire panelists, esteemed panelists, with whom I'm sharing the entire stage and sharing the knowledge. Coming back to the question, I think you have raised the right question, because as being in the petrochemical company, we are focusing on environment, and we are actually, we have to. Coming back to the information technology right now, this is the age where there are drastic developments and drastic, you can say, new technological things are coming, like machine learning, cryptocurrency, mining, and seemingly infinity data storage capacity enabled by cloud computing. The environmental cost of ubiquitous data computing in modern life is by the sheer complexity of infrastructure. Let me first of all thank both the panelists, those who have already mentioned a couple of things related to infrastructure, because infrastructure plays a very important role, and at the same time the resources, and you have to have a multi-skill resources as now. And coming back to the environmental benefits of cloud computing, actually this question, it is a debatable question where you can spend hours on debating, because there are advantages and there are disadvantages. There are pros and cons of cloud computing. Okay, like certain companies and certain industries, they are exploring the opportunities of moving to the cloud in a hybrid platform way. But at the same time, like especially, let me tell you, like we are in petrochemical, we have to follow the compliance of NCA, and in most of the cases, we have to be on premises, especially our OT side. We cannot even think about moving it on the cloud. But again, coming to the advantages, the first and core advantage I could say is like basically related to the reducing of energy usage, where presently you might be, if a data center is allocated in each and every company, that means each and every unit is having more of energy utilization as of now. Just take an example, like there was a research done by Google, and it was clearly mentioned like softwares which are basically applications like a ERP system. These all applications can be hosted on cloud and they can be shared, where you are not going to have the entire burden on yourself. You're just shifting a burden to a third party or company where they are going to manage the entire thing. The same comes with the energy wise, as it is, the more the companies are going to utilize the cloud, the more they will cut the energy utilization. It is like presently they ask for the calculation of different, we can say information which is on internet. 87% of the energy usage can be cut down if by 2025. And coming back to like big giants, especially like Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Apple, they are all moving towards there. They have committed and they are planning to opt it by end of 2025 and 2030. This is one of the things where you can reduce the energy usage. The second thing is like decreasing of greenhouse emissions, which is again basically coming back to your cloud computing cuts the amount of GHG emitted by data centers. A traditional on-site data center produce these kind of emissions throughout this life cycle. Once the hardware grows old, definitely it consumes more of electricity, and it consumes more of other emissions, which is basically has to be maintained. And you have to refresh your infrastructure just to mitigate these greenhouse gases emissions. Again, coming back to the petrochemical, I can add like over here, environmental monitoring is the core part, because okay, we are aware that we expose, you can say, the certain kind of chemicals throughout the entire city. So the government is managing, and at the same time, people, those who are responsible of managing, they have to handle it very, very, very cautiously. How those things has to be disposed, or even if we are blowing it into the air, we have to do it in a certain stages, certain steps, where certain processes where we don't harm the entire environment, those who are living around us. And coming back again, back to the IT side, assembling of equipment. This will, even that will take time, moving the equipment from one location to the other, where if you are moving on the cloud computing, you have a unified space allocation where the entire scale up capabilities are placed over there. So you can plan and you can design accordingly to you. Third thing is the dematerialization, because cloud computing make a positive contribution to sustainability. Again, the sustainability now is one of the major topic which the entire world is trying to achieve. They wanted to replace of high carbon physical products with virtual environment, where you are going to move and utilize more of virtual environment related technological aspect. And at the same time, even as due to the COVID, I think we have already opted it and adopted it. Like each and every company now, they have moved their data sharing applications to Dropbox, SharePoint, or Google, or whatever you say, the platform of technology, what we have it. Let me give you an example of e-signature. Definitely, we have moved further. You can say we have speed up and we have accelerated because of the COVID. We have started utilizing, knowingly or unknowingly, every industry, every company, every organization is already onto it. They wanted to cut the paperwork, they wanted to cut out the paper utilization, and they wanted to, they don't need to dispose of document that has a negative environment impact. You are muted.
Yes. Let me describe one thing actually. As our friend actually, Mr. Abdulaziz said, moving to SharePoint or moving to kinds of heavily documentation, usually it is adding a lot of bandwidth utilization. Of course, it's from one hand, it's reducing the paperwork, but sometimes it's adding a headache here or there in terms of network connectivity, especially for people, for companies or organizations who are centralized in certain location. How this affect you, or maybe your company is distributed in multiple locations, so you do not feel this kind of headache?
No, absolutely. As I have mentioned earlier, Mr. Abdulaziz has mentioned in the right point. The infrastructure has to be upgraded. You cannot remain on the same infrastructure what it was a couple of years back. You know, if you go on to the technological aspect, like as I mentioned, knowingly, unknowingly, everybody has started utilizing the cloud platform. Take an example of any application which is for video conferencing, a conferencing application. You are on Teams, you are on Zoom, to name it, everything is on cloud. So definitely the bandwidth has to be increased, and as it has mentioned earlier, you need to have multiple ISPs who can provide this, because you cannot be dependent on one ISP. If that connection or connectivity goes down, then it is something like your business continuity plan is failing. So you need to have multiple options with the ample of bandwidth, and at times we suffer initially, but now I think keeping in mind even the location, we have got multiple sources of ISPs where we can fulfill the requirement accordingly to our business requirements.
Actually, let me ask you one more question actually related to when you are choosing your service provider or your ISP. Are you looking into the footprint that they are taking care about environment? Because part of the how to measure the service providers is how to measure their footprint and their contribution to environment in general, and the environment, social, and governance goals in another aspect. Are you considering this while going to? Did you make any kind of measurements for these ISPs?
Yes, let me add. We are actually in our company, we have a process like procurement goes and do a kind of a background check, and they communicate and what all, like especially for social responsibilities. If any company is doing taking initiatives related to social responsibility and environment, if it is related, definitely we give them the privilege, and at the same time we make them to move ahead and plan accordingly, because our requirement to fulfill, there are some basic necessities that has to be matched to come on board.
Yes, okay, and that's great actually, because we are looking in this environment as well, and their contribution to the environment. So great. Okay, let me now move another question to Mr. Basim. Mr. Basim, actually, you are coming as well from an aviation sector, and aviation sector as well is considered as notorious for being a sector with high carbon footprint. How do you think your current IT operations contribute toward this? And the other issue actually is, how do you think more aggressive adoption of cloud offering will make positive impact towards the goals of carbon reduction as well on the environment? How do you see these things, Basim?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mohammed, and for having me in this panel, and welcome to everyone. So as you rightly said, yes, we as an airport are like our scale of IT operations is really huge in nature. And that's to the fact that our buildings are really massive in size. And you know that having IT is a core element in each and every building, because we are trying to digitalize the passenger journey at each and every step. So that is in fact having a negative impact, as you rightly said, on the carbon footprint. But to make that positive, like as an airport, we have gone through the cloud approach, and we have gone through the private cloud mainly, okay, and less on the public cloud. And I'm gonna summarize that. So when it comes to private cloud, we have gone mainly about consolidation and virtualization to reduce the amount of server footprint that we have, which reduces further the footprint in the database, the footprint in the data centers, the energy consumption, and even the cooling requirements in the data centers. We have also gone, as you know, the rest of the respective panelists have highlighted, on the new technology trends. So as a real example, you know what, we used to have a CCTV storage with us, which was consuming 4 racks at each data center that we have. And by refreshing this technology, we have just gone for 1/3 of a rack. So imagine how much of savings we have done in terms of the footprint, in terms of even the energy saving that we have. When it comes to public cloud, we are very sensitive in going there as an aviation sector. It's mainly due to the compliance that we have to be with the security agencies. However, we do use the public cloud mainly when it comes to test and dev use cases, okay, that you have to do. And sometimes we utilize the public cloud for the AI use cases. As we know, AI requires high performance computing, low amount of GPUs. And again, the AI use cases that are available across all the applications are very few. So rather than purchasing that hardware and having it in-house on-prem, we utilize cloud for that. The other thing that we have done, there are a lot of endpoints across the airport. Okay, literally at each and every step of the airport where the passenger goes through, there's an endpoint. So there's a workstation. What we have taken the approach of going the approach of the VDI. Why? Because VDIs utilizes thin clients. And as per a study which has been done, the thin client utilization on the electricity is half that is used in the desktops or laptops. And on top of that, even the thin client, the lifetime of the thin clients is 10 years as an average, whereas the desktop lifetime is from 3 to 5 years. So looking at what I have highlighted, from the private and the public cloud use cases that we're having, if we look at that and we adopt all these things, we are in fact positively impacting the entire supply chain. So we'll be consuming less hardware, which is making it as a less production for the factories, and then even lesser disposal, because we need to refresh our hardware at every 5 to 7 years because they get out of age. So by doing that, we are really impacting the entire life, the supply chain cycle. The other thing that we have also been careful in the airports is by digitalizing the papers, okay? So Ms. Mohammed was speaking about some other SharePoint and other platforms that we're having. What we're trying to do along with the airlines is digitalizing the tickets. The boarding passes, as you can see right now, they became as an app. And we are enabling technologies like our boarding pass gates to read those digital boarding passes rather than printing these boarding passes. Last but not least, we at airports, we participate in a program which is owned by ACI, the Airport Council International, called the Airport Carbon Accreditation Program, and which has 6 levels. And alhamdulillah, proudly I can say that we as Oman airports, we reached to the level 3 of that program, which is contributing again very positively towards the environment.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Actually, I'm really happy to have our airports and our service getting good ranking actually on those kind of performance indicators related to environment and as well related to performance. It's really amazing. And when you are always talking about the thin client, I like the approach that thin client is really have longer lifetime, as well it will have lower impact on the environment. And actually, I was part of CETA in 1999, where I ran the first thin client project for airlines. It was for Royal Jordanian, actually. I was at that time part of CETA, so it's we are coming in the same direction. And one more point, actually, I need to discuss with you is that related to private cloud as well as public cloud. I know actually private cloud is used because you have a lot of regulations in this industry. But sometimes the public cloud is used because you are using a kind of analytics or a kind of, as you said, artificial intelligence. And in this, actually, you require a lot of computing. And the good thing maybe is that you are having the transactional data on your private cloud, but you have the analytical part, you have it in the public cloud. And I need to ask you actually a question related to one of the considerations when we are talking about environmental aspects, is that how we design the application, or even the source code. Sometimes how the source code is written, or which programming language is used. Sometimes we are looking into these details when we are considering the effect of environment. Are you considering these factors? Do you have something from your experience you can share with us?
Well, yes, true. That's a very true factor. In fact, we at the airport, we have our own development team. Like we try to, in fact, to reduce the cost in the airport. As you know, that airline and airport industry have been heavily impacted by the COVID scenario because of lower passengers were not really traveling. So what we have tried to, we try to develop all these softwares in-house. And one of the factors that you used to look at is the CPU utilization. Okay, so we have seen that sometimes when the developers develop all these softwares with us, some of the source codes were not tuned to minimize the CPU utilization. As you know that utilizing high CPU, again, it negatively impacts on utilizing the power on the service as well. So, and like for that, we have bought some tools to review the source code of these applications in order to optimize them from that utilization end.
Yeah, okay, that's the real very good experience, because people sometimes when they read in theory how they optimizing the source code or something like this, they have some doubts. So we have to have practical examples to show people what, even how much details we are in IT industry are looking. So actually we are getting in a very, very big aspect of details actually to get the value. So yes, really very good example. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and I will go back to Mr. Abdulaziz Alkhlaif again. Now, and Mr. Abdulaziz, you are part of the healthcare sector, and healthcare sector is a sector that is famous for caring about people. Now, how do you believe the workforce and the human resources skill sets have been impacted due to working in the cloud activities? Maybe you can describe some also effects on social behaviors of your workers as well your stakeholders.
Yeah, I think the picture have changed once the COVID have hit 2019 and beginning of 2020. So remote working was introduced, and it shows a differentiator. Once, if you are ready for remote working, you will be fine and your business will not be heavily impacted. And that opened a huge opportunity for us. We used to have that capability of having to hire skills worker or expert locally here, and we have to bring them to the site of the country so they could do their job on site. Now, with this introduction, when they open the door for remote worker, or remote worker will not be only at home within the same country. You could extend that to anywhere in the country. So, and also if regulation allow, you could extend it further to a neighboring country. So the pool has been widened right now, so we could pick the right core skills. Now, that being said, that means that upskirt technology could be introduced in the work environment, and it would be covered with the right skilled people without jeopardizing the having the length of skill transfer, or even training or other aspects that usually come with this type of technology knowledge transfer. So that opened a lot of opportunity for us to get skilled workers from outside the regular pool. The other side is that more skills that is demanded by the implementing of cloud technology is also pushing back from our side. Now, the regular way of deployment, having the server in our data center, has been right now being pushed aside, and we are moving to have everything as a service, everything as soft-defined. So network is software defined, servers are software defined, everything is software defined. So reskilling or retraining people to have those capability have been a challenge. Finding the right people that have the skills to move ahead with this direction of moving to the cloud, for not only private cloud. Everybody knows private cloud is simply just moving or co-location. You move your racks or servers to a different data center, and then you could monitor them from afar. But actually adopting serverless technology, adopting not even a virtual, it's like technology like Dockers, technology like other type of technology that will only rely on whatever you are using as processing for your programs, not even going to the detail of owning the whole virtual computer or virtual server. So those type of movement from a traditional, you have to have your own server, you run it and you maintain it and everything, up to having only serverless environment that only you're just interested in whatever you're running as a process right now in the memory, and then it will disappear. Those type of shift between the traditional and the new is of course challenging, and I think with this open way of recruiting from outside, our team have grown from 5 developers to 15. That is remotely working and task oriented, doing as a particular task in a separate place, and then we embed it or roll it out in a different environment under strict, of course, review and security audit.
Actually, that gives me to ask you two questions. Maybe because in this COVID situation, you as a healthcare sector have introduced a lot of applications, a lot of services. Did you find it was challenging to have to recruit the right programmer or the right resource to do certain activities, even globally? How do you feel that was?
I think the first part, when people were working remotely, it was easier at that point, because some situation will present a risk and also opportunity. A lot of people have lost their traditional jobs at that point, and then they were looking for alternative jobs. And skilled worker sitting at home that could provide service to build a piece of your software or certain activity related to your work were abundantly available. So from that side, I think it was at the beginning a little bit slow to gain those skilled workers, then it took off. So right now the pool is the entire world. I think it's become more abundant for those requirements.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fine, great. Okay, and thanks indeed actually for this insightful situation. Thank you very much. Okay, now I need to go to Mr. Abdullah Salim again and ask you. You are as well actually coming from the Ministry of Health and coming from the health sector. So how do you see other elements impacting the environmental and transition to the cloud, other than the IT management aspects that we have discussed during our discussions?
Thank you, Mohammed. Well, I think there are three main things that we could generally think of when it comes to the environment and the future initiatives and strategy of IT. One is, whenever we are thinking about digital transformation, we need to keep in mind the environmental impact, and we need to keep in mind how we could utilize shared services or shared component or getting off-the-shelf services rather than doing it in the traditional manner. That will have an impact on the environment and an impact on the cost. So having that factor, the environmental factor, while thinking of the digital transformation or digitization strategy is really a key element. To be frank with you, without having support or that way of thinking from a strategic level, I think it's not going to be very beneficial for projects and initiative to take in place or to think about the environment when they thinking about kicking off their projects or their transformation plans. Second is regulation. So I know data privacy is really important, and there is a strict regulation on that. Most probably, we could look at computing power that doesn't require, processing of sensitive information, and how we can utilize using that in the cloud without having, something that requires us locally to do, and thus reducing the computing power required. So regulation is also key. It could encourage the use of the cloud in a way that positively impact the environment, or it could just, regulate and mandate what practices need to be taken in the cloud, and that not necessarily will take into consideration the environment. Final thing, maybe this is a very optimistic point, is to subsidize programs that could support cloud providers to come locally and to provide, to, let's say, set up places for them that is mostly ideal for cloud computing housing power. That programs, subsidized programs will be beneficial in two ways. One is to save the environment. Two is to preserve the regulations and, to preserve having the data and having the use of the cloud within the kingdom.
Okay, that's really great insights actually, and it's really amazing. Yani, we have our very rich experience with our panelists, mashallah, so that we are putting a real case studies, real situations. And let me go back to the petrochemical industry and discuss with Muhammad Khan actually how to describe the ways to reduce the data center environmental impact and while preserving the efficiency, because still we are caring about the efficiency. So how do you see this, Mohammed?
Yeah, thank you very much again, Mohammed Shalan, for asking me this question. Let me tell you, just now, our Abdullah has already mentioned about shared resources. Shared resources, I think we are running out of time, so I'm going to run quickly. So shared resources is the core and the key part to achieve the efficiency, because, let me give you an example. IT resources. Presently, it's a positive outcome for the entire environment if you're going to move on the cloud computing. And on the concept of sharing resources and hence maximizing the effectiveness of those resources is one of the things. At the same time, cloud computing centers use advanced technologies that are energy efficient. This is one of the points. They use less energy for lighting, cooling, power conditions, resulting in more of energy saving. They can invest in cooling techniques. They can have certain systems related to, you can say, power on demand and monitoring, because if it is not required, you can simply shut down, and you can invest in new equipments. You don't need to invest by yourself. The data center, the cloud is already going to have it. You just need to scale it up. And the most in the core part is invest in renewable energies, because I have been going through with many documents, and in those of the documents, it was very amazed to me, Google and the big giants, they are building the data center, especially in Iceland, because they don't want to have a cooling system. So they have a natural cooling system where they're going to spend less of the investment and less of the money to overcome this requirement. And at the same time, there is one more, which is a kind of, you can say, emergencies on contingencies power is an important consideration for data center. And red diesel is used especially for generators. But I have just lately read hydro-treated vegetable oil is being used instead of red oil for running the generators. So you can say fossil free advanced renewable fuel are getting utilized, and the entire world is transforming. As a couple of years back, we can think about cloud. Now we are thinking of how efficiently we can run, keeping in mind the main and the core part is climate and the energy saving part, how we can cut down in carbon emission. As mentioned by one of our panelists, 2% of the entire carbon emission is because of IT, cloud, as well as manufacturing of all the IT equipment. So the entire world is thinking, and they're coming up with multiple plans to eliminate and to mitigate these carbon emission things. Many companies has already gone and they have already provided the strategy. One of them, let me tell you, Alibaba has already done in 2017, but they haven't disclosed the entire study. They have eliminated a major part of utilization of energy, and they have decreased it on a big number, but they never shared it the entire. I was not able to find it. So there are a number of ways where you can plan it and where you can use the cloud efficiently.
And I think when we are talking about big giants actually who are running cloud and they are responsible for environment, they are accountable, then I think we can find some ways everywhere to. And I like your example actually of changing the oil that is running generators, because for this actually we are talking about circular economy, how we reproduce all the products that instead of getting to waste it, just we can reproduce it in certain formats so that we can utilize it. And this is really a very good example actually to see a lot of circular economy that we can recycle everything and we can get benefit of it. So that's a really interesting example here.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, please.
Do you have something in your company similar to this that you are using or that you are?
Let me tell you, we are going to actually come up with an initiative. Actually, the oil resources, which is like a waste for us, we have innovated internally, and we are right now in a kind of testing where we wanted to regenerate and reutilize that. So we have given a kind of you can say the entire study to the government, where once they approve it, we will have it by ourselves. And I'm sure once we are going to test trial run, we will be exhibiting to the entire world to benefit with that.
Yeah, okay, that's really interesting actually, because I mean, everyone have a unique experience that they can share. So really, it's amazing that everyone can find a solution from his dimension, from his part. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now I need to have this question actually to Basim again, and to ask you, Basim, how do you see now? For example, you are coming from the airline industry. So how in this last decade there was a phenomena where large cloud providers made significant investment in establishing cloud or data centers in our region, in the Middle East. In spite of the fact actually that we have like year-round sunshine, but still there is a lot of people moving in here. How do you see this trend? And opposite to what have said by Mohammed Khan actually, is that they are moving to the bowl or something like this. How you see people are moving to our region to have their data centers here?
Thank you, Mohammed. Yeah, you are absolutely right. As you can see, like the major cloud providers in the world, we have their presence in the Middle East, being it Microsoft, Amazon, Oracle, they all have their clouds with us. And the main reason I believe behind these is the cloud adoption in this region has significantly increased. And that's due to the revised policies even by the governments, which are easing to business to businesses to move their data to the cloud, as well as the again the maturity of the organizations and even the cloud providers. That there has been maturity over time. People have seen the cloud success scenarios which are available around the world, so people have more confidence now move to the cloud. And the other thing which has been like mainly I can see it, you know, people in this region which are really caring about is the localization of the data. Now we can see a lot of cloud providers in this region, they provide you that option. So if you want your data only to reside within your country in that cloud, they'll provide you that option. If you want to sync it across the border to other countries, again, that option is there. So that's why we can see major shift now, which is going to the cloud, which made the cloud providers come to the Middle East. And on the other hand, when you said about the sunshine around the year, yes, we have, you know, like Mr. Mohammed was giving us the examples of Google building their clouds in Iceland to utilize the condition of the weather. Well, we can say here it's on the other way around. Like we have sunshine, which is potential for us using it as a solar energy, okay, to cool our data centers. So we can utilize the solar power and turn it into energy and make it as a green energy, because we can see that governments in this region, they're introducing now solar policies, and they're even incentivizing businesses, okay, which use green energies. And they even allow you the option, in fact, to sell back the excess energy back to them. So yeah, we are getting revenues from that. And one of the, again, best factors within our region, the weather conditions are really stable. So we know that we have 8 to 9 months of heat and 3 to 4 months, I wouldn't say of cold, of like what you call it, acceptable weather. So again, and the one more reason again, like the energy costs within our region again is comparatively cheap when you look at the rest of the regions. One more example I just would like to share here, Mr. Mohammed, is about the locations of the data centers really matters when we build them in our region. So for example, I'll give you a real example which happened in Oman. There's a cloud provider, I'll not name it. They went and built their data center on top of the mountain, which is called Jabal Akhdar. And the benefit over there, at any time during the year, that area is 10 degrees cooler than any area at the ground. So they need lesser energy right now to cool their data centers. They don't need to really like spend a lot of amount in the electricity in highly cooling their data centers. So that's a real example again, like from the country itself.
It's great actually. They are using green technology like sunshine or something like this to utilize the cooling. So it's a compromise, because as you said actually, rightly, we have a lot of factors to have other centers in the region, because there is some regulations as well for when you are talking about IoT, and maybe you are in the airport industry, you are using a lot of sensors and something, and sometimes you are looking for edge computing or for computing that is nearby, because to avoid latency, to avoid certain parameters actually being data loss or something like this. So yes, we are thinking actually to have more and more data centers in our region, as well to have a kind of few edge computing data centers, something like here and there, so that to run IoT, to run other industries that is sensitive to certain network parameters. So really, thank you very much. This is very good, insightful. Actually, we have like few minutes left. I will ask if we have any questions before we go to from your side or from the audiences, before we continue to have a wrap up of our session. So anyone have any questions? Roger or any of the panelists, do you have to share something before we try to conclude?
No, Mr. Shalan, so far no questions, but in case we do have any questions, we would definitely send them across, and it can be answered from your team, right? Okay, fine. So then I need to go to the panelists actually one by one in the same sequence, and I need to have like a final thought about the cloud. What you need to tell people in like 1 or 2 sentences about the cloud. Let me start in the same order of the panel actually. So how do you say things? Let's start with Abdulaziz Alkhlaif first, please.
Yeah, I could say that moving to the cloud actually will reduce costs. It will increase benefit for any organization. It will decrease complexity. It will also reduce security once done in the proper way. Moving to the cloud, I think, would be the next logical thing. We are been into the industry for a while right now, and we are looking to have the IT be more like a utility, and that introduction of that certain technology like cloud computing is moving us toward having the IT services as a utility, and I'm all for it. It's always reducing the effort on the organization. Thank you also for the panel.
Yeah, great insight. What about Abdullah Salim, please? What do you have?
I think we need to look at the organizational objectives and needs before we plan for moving to the cloud or adopting the cloud. Sometimes lift and shift works for some organizations, sometimes it doesn't. So prioritizing the business objectives and having a proper plan will really bring the benefit of the cloud that everyone is aiming for. But without having that proper planning, it might get things more complicated. So that's my thought about this. I'm very delighted to have this session with all the distinguished panelists and all the audience.
Thank you very much. Actually, this is really planning is key in certain activities, because you will find a lot of parameters, a lot of dynamics, of KPIs that you need to look into. And I actually back up you, but this that everyone needs to look into all these dynamics before he takes a decision. For he needs to think specifically about every application, about every parameter, about everything he is doing. So yes, you are right in this actually. Thank you very much. Mr. Mohammed Khan, what do you see? How do you see things?
See, first of all, as both the panelists have mentioned, we need to have a plan and a strategy in place. And at the same time, we have to identify what systems you are going to move. You cannot, you can say, test run with your core production systems. It has to be something which is not critical to you, and you try to move on in and utilize the cloud as a hybrid system and slowly transfer the entire or else whatever the required things to the cloud. Definitely there, from cost perspective, energy perspective, carbon perspective, IT resources perspective, we are going to cut down and we are going to have it. But at the same time, there are advantages where you can have a scalability, where you can have a computing, whatever the requirement it goes off. Definitely that is also going to give a cost. It's not something like it is going to be less. But presently, I can tell you, like, we have moved a couple of years back and we haven't moved the critical systems. We have started moving the non-critical systems, and we have started exploring those things, and things are pretty much fine and under control and manageable. Definitely, we even have to upgrade the infrastructure. I think we have a proper plan and a strategy in place to work on the entire like shifting ourselves from your traditional data center to the cloud systems.
Great insight. So this is how to be wise in movement, actually. Yes. Okay.
Thank you very much for hosting me, and I'm glad to share the entire platform with all the knowledgeable and core-headed panelists. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Basim.
All right, so from my opinion, Mr. Mohammed, I would say that the hybrid cloud option really is something that we need to look at, because again, it's cloud is no more an option sometimes. There are a lot of companies, like major companies, they stop developing their on-prem softwares, and they provide you their latest features only in the cloud. Okay, so that's one force which is coming from the major providers. And if for the on-prem things that we need to move to cloud, I would say that we need to first test the water, move, again, the non-critical workload, as Mr. Mohammed have highlighted, test it for some time. Again, cloud might not be always cheaper. It might be sometimes expensive as well if you don't choose the right workload to move it to the cloud. But yes, cloud is the reality, and that we need to accept it.
Yes, thank you, Manoj. Thank you very much for this insightful information. And really, it was my pleasure to be with you all and to learn from you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Back to you, Roger.
Thank you very much to your panelists, Abdullah, Engineer Abdulaziz, Basim, Mohammad, and our dear moderator, Mr. Mohammad Shalan, for an extremely interactive, insightful discussion. It indeed was great to hear some top trends, solutions, and key points around interrogating the use of cloud impact and how it impacts the environment, right? Thank you once again for your time, and hope you'll have a great rest of the day. Thank you.